all right, we're going to do better this time. So a couple weeks ago, I was not properly prepared, did not set an agenda up front, did not try and put something together. We tried to make a podcast happen out of nothing. And as you guys saw, about 15 minutes in, I pulled the plug because that was not good content. And we hold ourselves to a high standard over it. I'm not sure what that standard is, but we hold it to a high one. Or, just high people holding themselves to a standard. Who knows? But nonetheless, we're back. We've got some content. We've got some rankings. We got some trades to talk about. We got 5 hosts today. So a return from hiatus, I'll call it, is here finally for all of you to enjoy. And again, I can't think of a better group to join me than Bill, the Broncos, RJ, the Eagles, Brandon, the Giants, and of course Goose, who, again, Gustav, the Goose, you're the Chiefs now, right?
Allegedly.
I mean, among other teams as well, I'm sure. But anyway, so a set of rankings went up earlier, going through post-draft, saying kind of where are people sitting in the power ranks. We'll talk about how people moved, where people are sitting right now, too high, too low, what the hell was Bill thinking, things like that. So we'll go ahead and get things going here. I'll share that tab, so that'll be a little bit easier to follow. Stand by. Sharing. There we go. So, special thanks to the Giants, the Panthers, the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Eagles for filling these out. Yes, my name's there too, but as I told Bill earlier, I've been going since about 4:30 this morning, so have not had time to fill that out yet, but I do promise at some point, either by adrenaline or lack of sleep, in the next 24 hours, I will fill out that, and we'll see if that changes things much. But special thanks to Giants for sorting that. But let's go ahead and get into the tiers people are in. So the not your year tier, we've got the Colts, the Texans, the 49ers, the Bears, the Titans, the Eagles, Saints, Seahawks, Lions, and Patriots. I won't say there's any wild surprises here. These are teams that we're drafting often and early in this draft and or building up capital for next year. As the current owner of the 49ers first, I'm very excited to see them in this tier. But, again, I don't think there's any major surprises. But granted, there's probably teams that are going to make a jump up.
The Colts is a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I don't know. The Colts, to me, and we'll kind of go round robin here. Colts, to me, feels a lot like how, and no offense, Bill. Well, some offense, I'm sorry. How Bill built his team in the last couple of years, where he's gone and acquired a lot of big, shiny, impressive pieces from a dynasty building standpoint, not realizing he still has another half a team to put together. So he's having to backtrack a little bit and maybe not getting the value he wants. But since he's already traded all of his picks away, he's lost the ability to kind of say, all right, I overextended myself. I got to backtrack here. So, again, I think he has shown he's been able to find deals that he can potentially right the ship here. But as the roster currently stands, I don't think he's winning the AFC South. And if you're not winning the AFC South, you're probably in that top 12 conversation.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Colts isn't surprising at all.
That level of depth is just not there. And then those trades for guys like Zeke Elliott just retroactively look hard to swallow for a team in that position without the picks.
Yeah. It's fun to watch him take the swings, but he just didn't land the swings this year.
Well, again, some of them haven't landed yet. So I will caveat that. The swing on Zeke Elliott, I get it, has not landed yet, but Zeke signs would say, again, I think a favorite landing spot for me would be the Chargers, and that looks much different. Breida right now is a huge hope for upside. If Saquon doesn't show up, that's looking a lot better. Gainwell, unfortunately, looks like he's potentially getting crowded out, but we've thought that before, and he's always picked up kind of his share of things. So there's upside there, but again, every swing item has to go right for him to be in the wild card conversation.
Yeah.
And frankly, the AFC, there isn't a wild card conversation. It's the East and the West. I'm sorry, the North and the West are going to take all of them, with maybe a special appearance or so from the East. But realistically, all three are probably going to the North and West. So you got to win your division if you're in the South.
And I don't think you can ignore the improvements that the Jaguars have made.
Yeah, getting Jacobs was a huge win for him. It basically won the division for him. His team isn't great, right? But good enough to win the South.
I mean, we don't know if Jacobs is going to play.
Yeah, he hasn't signed his tender yet. So
then if he doesn't play, then he's fucked. And then we have a battle between the Texans and the Jags.
I feel like the Colts are not that far from the Jags, and I think they're deeper than the Texans, personally. But I just think it's interesting that they average out to not your year. I could have seen them as on the fence. That's all. I don't think they should. I'm not saying they're a playoff team, but
so I got to say, a team that I would not be shocked if they're in this not for your year tier that competes for the division is the Seahawks.
So
if AR-15, again, I probably should retire that nickname like he has. If he starts in the doubleheader window, then realistically, and or if Seahawks goes and gives the third the pass that he wants for Minshew, he has the makings of a team that could be really interesting. And again, the 49ers aren't looking fantastic. The Cardinals have started buying 24 picks.
25 picks.
25 picks, sorry. And potentially look to be breaking down some of those bigger pieces right now. The Rams don't really have a defense. Or maybe I'm thinking of the Cardinals. Either way. But that division is very winnable at, say, 9-8 or even 8-9. So with the amount of talent he's got on that roster, that seems infinitely possible if some of these rookies get some playing time. And just from a best ball perspective, he could just probably put up an average, say the 170s or 180s, and sneak his way in.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I literally said it in the chat because he was commenting about how he was poorly ranked. If he spent some of his draft capital to build out a defense and add some depth on offense, he would jump 2 tiers for me, be a playoff team.
Yeah, I can tell you, though, not inside scoop necessarily, but that's just not going to happen. There's not going to be pick traded on his part to try to make it happen this year. And, I think you got to look at Cardinals' trade of Walker and realize that he just got Madison as an RB1 basically for free. And he sold Walker, who now is splitting time with Charbonnet, with Charbs, for some picks, but he's still in really good shape in that division. He's got Burrow. He's got a defense. His defense is better this year than last year. Cards is easily, I think, the front runner if he keeps paying attention to his roster this year.
I don't disagree, but Cardinals really has no defense.
Yeah. So again, it's if the case for Seahawks to make the playoffs is the rookies and youth start overperforming. Hall comes back early in the season and is exactly who he was last year.
Yeah.
The sort of the receivers and AR and Richardson, jump in and are immediately impactful. So I don't mean Richardson needs to be a top 15 QB, although frankly I think as soon as he plays he's going to be in that conversation. At least from a point scoring perspective, but there's an easy path, I'd say, there.
But Seahawks actually has no defense. I mean, there is nothing there. I mean, there's a couple rookies and one old guy, but that's bereft of any kind of talent.
Yeah, I think that they're kind of very similar teams, honestly.
So, I mean, I like Karlaftis a lot. I think he's going to probably continue to develop in Kansas City after his first year. Brees seems to be stepping into a solid role, and again, I'm still a bit of a homer for Solomon Thomas. Linebacker, I agree, is a concern, but you can see a path towards kind of a best ball thing. Again, Bill's probably right. he would have to sell some draft capital to build out the scoring on his defense in some of the areas. And Goose, like you said, I truly don't see that happening. But at least it's an interesting add to the conversation.
Yeah. And from his perspective, and we've talked about it before, like we're always like, stay the course. Like you're doing the right things, kind of building this thing the right way.
The other factor is that Cards, unless I'm mistaken, doesn't have his first rounder.
That's correct.
So there's like zero benefit for him to do anything but just go for it this year.
Right. And again, I wonder if he continues to search for some of those break it up trades. Like, again, I think he really enjoyed having that Burrow and Chase stack. Now he's got Burrow and Jameson. Burrow and Jefferson. So since he can't exactly trade back for Chase, does he try and break down Burrow? My thought is probably not.
Trade back. It's been over a year.
I don't know.
I'll be the
when you
middleman.
look at it, like having Burrow and Jefferson seems like the best. Like,
it's a great situation to be in.
If you only have 2 tent poles, those are the ones that I want.
Right.
Yeah, they do get really expensive next year, but that's for next year.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, that's going to be a $60 million cap hit jump for him between those two players. So,
but he definitely has some marginal players that are coming off the roster or could be cut that are going to open up an incredible amount of space for him.
It's a nice way of saying he's got some expensive losers.
Or I mean,
marginal. They're on the roster now. They could give you points, but you
Some
might not need
guys
them
that are
next
going to
year.
be unemployed.
Well, I mean, look, BJ Hill for $12.6 million is probably a little bit expensive, but that would free up some space. Linebacker, he's got $25 million between Jonas Griffith and Cole Holcomb. Those are some longer term deals that, we'll see how those turn out for him. Landon Collins at safety as a free agent. Didn't he retire?
No.
He's not retired, but he's out of the league. I mean, I don't think he's signing this year, so he could be an easy drop for next year, probably for that 25% cut or whatever it costs.
You could probably also just sell him to the Patriots for a fourth,
or even a fifth.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know. It's an interesting team. Like, I mean, the Niners, like, they don't have a quarterback, or else I would say that it would be them to worry about. But it's that division is basically the Rams and the Cardinals.
Yeah,
and then the Seahawks, depending on what happens with Anthony Richardson and stuff like that. Like we said, like that could possibly be a thing, but who knows?
And I think one of the X factors you got for Cards is Jalen Warren, who really could put up some best ball points. They're really kind of talking him up this year, and he's basically free, and he's his RB3 or RB2.
He's not free if you try to get him.
Not if you try to get him, but he's cost wise, he's there. So yeah, between Rams and Cardinals, it could go either way. I probably need to adjust my rankings now after talking about this.
Yeah, again, this is part of why I'm waiting to do this is because I didn't have time today, but part of it is because I want to talk about this and then I'll put my rankings together. So, getting the benefit of all of this information. So I appreciate everybody's help in thinking about rankings.
Mike just wants to do the mock draft after the draft actually takes place.
There you go. Hey, you know what? No, I'll have the best mock. I'll win the award, and of course that award in a fake football league, a podcast about the fake football league, isn't even a pat on the back. It's probably a dislocated shoulder. Anyways, so we'll talk.
Definitely some side eye from your wife.
Yeah. Well, and last thing with Cardinals, he's got $10 million Quan Alexander, who is basically just a drop right there. So there's a lot of cap space for him next year.
That's true. All right. With only 2 teams on the fence, I imagine both of these are because, again, they're solid teams, but they're just stuck in fucking just grinders of divisions where it's like if you were in the South or if you were in the East, you'd have a chance to win your division. But since you're stuck in the West or the North, you're fucked.
Both of these teams would win their division hands down if they weren't in their own divisions. Like either one of them could win the South or the East, but they're in the wrong divisions, unfortunately.
I remember those days. I had Jeremy and Goose, both commissioners, cheating their way to the top of the NFC North.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
I understand. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the not your year teams probably belong in this tier as well. Kind of looking up to the potential playoff teams. So if I count let's see here, contenders down to the potential playoff teams, I believe that's 20 or 19 teams for 14 spots. So sure, I guess that kind of works. I'd say that a couple of these teams did really well in the draft and helped jump up their opportunity, probably no more so than the Jets.
Yep.
So I want to kind of go through some of the stuff that they've done, what they like about the Jets.
Oh yeah, just give me a second. They added their quarterback. They got C.J. Stroud to an already decent best ball room for next year with Garoppolo and Jacoby. Potentially having 3 starting quarterbacks.
No, he definitely has 3 starting quarterbacks.
All right, Sam Howell, you're on notice. He still needs running back. That's just a gaping hole of mediocrity right now. He's continued to invest in wide receiver after selling Garrett Wilson to get his quarterback. He added a bunch of defensive pieces I think we all liked. Will Anderson was the big one. Jack Campbell, linebacker. If you looked at just the names, the raw names that he picked up defensively as well, he went from having no defense to having kind of someone at each of the positions that you can consider kind of a blue chip piece, which is great. So yeah, he drastically improved his team, and we expected that because he had 4 or so first round picks.
Yeah, I would have some critiques for his. That Jack Campbell pick that early is, I think, a little bit painful, just like it was for the Lions in real life. And you prioritize defense over offense when you don't have any kind of RBs. It's just tough. Now he's got some defense after spending a ton of money in free agency on defense. But his best running back is still unemployed. And that's the reality.
Yeah. I think to the Jack Campbell piece, I think when that pick was made, we did the post-draft or draft pod. I think a lot of us were that was a pretty good spot for him. I think seeing where the rest of the linebackers went, which is middle of the second round, that's where that kind of becomes awkward, just with how that draft ended up falling.
Right. In the hindsight helps, but
also just hearing that he hasn't been impressive.
It's early. Linebacker is one of those positions where.
Yeah. And I wouldn't worry about the news. You got a first round linebacker. That's a lot of value drafted into him. But when you're kind of short on offense, that's a early pick. Even in a 12-team league, if someone was taking a linebacker at that spot, what is it? A 2.01. I could, even in an IDP 12-team league, I couldn't justify taking a linebacker at the 2.01 pick. I couldn't do it.
What about a defensive tackle?
Hey,
that's the 2.01 team, the pick in a 12-team draft.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but that's the third round in a 12-team league. That's fine. But over some of his other options right there, a Shane, Charbs, Kendra Miller, those guys normally go well before Campbell.
Yeah.
And
I mean, even just like any of those names who were available at that pick, like that doesn't really change my perspective of his running back room, to be honest.
But what's the ceiling of the players that were just like named off compared to what his ceiling is?
I mean, when you could look at it for like the RB option, I mean the LB options that he had with all his second round picks, it's a huge ceiling difference.
Yeah, that
like he could have gotten Henley or Trenton, like just he could have gotten a couple linebackers late that he didn't. Like he could have had Drew Sanders late. I mean, I'd rather have Drew Sanders and one of the running backs that he had inverted. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think that's
I'm not a Campbell fan by any stretch of the imagination, but also like none of those combinations sound like they produce as much as he could potentially produce after year one.
But I get that. But again, at the same time, like, look, Campbell went where he went, and maybe it's going to change with the format change. But if you try to get a first rounder for the top linebacker in the league right now, so say I don't know if it's Roquan Smith or I have to kind of do some analysis to figure out who our linebacker one would be. You probably wouldn't get above the 120 for the top linebacker in the league. Like if Dolphins made Devin White available right now, is he getting a first rounder for him?
Late first rounder, maybe.
Yeah, especially not right now.
So
again,
maybe scarcity changes this. But if the best linebacker, even if he's a little bit more expensive in the league, cannot get the capital that you're spending on a lottery pick, basically, like I just don't see it. Like I would rather go the offense there. Granted, I have notoriously gone early on DN because of scarcity, and elite DNs go for a buttload in here, or had gone for a buttload in here. So maybe that's where linebackers are going to start to move once we start seeing the impact of the change. But right now it's kind of like, okay, you're placing your bet and the bet pays 20% upside or is a loss. Like nobody would gamble with those odds.
Yeah. I think right now, like your top 5 by points per game for linebacker are Josie, Oliakun, Luvu, Smith, Roquan Smith, and Nick Bolton. Like that's points per game. Like Nick Bolton's probably your most valuable young linebacker out there.
Yeah.
So again, would you trade this pick for Nick Bolton?
No, because where was Nick Bolton drafted in our draft?
End of the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that's my only thought. So while I agree with what RJ is saying from a scarcity of position and kind of, and I love how, and I mentioned this during the draft shows, that everything is inverted in fantasy, that we kill the pick live. Oh my God, I can't believe they took Gibbs as high as they did in the first round. And I can't believe they picked Campbell where they did in the first round. We turn around and say, well, the hit rate of those things are pretty damn good. So they're super valuable in fantasy. So again, it's one of those hypocrisies of fantasy that just make me laugh. But nonetheless, just in terms of the draft capital, I just can't see it paying off. But hey, I'm wrong a lot in this league.
Well,
so.
And the other thing you've got to wonder about, even with the Will Anderson pick, is we're about to have all these extra DEs from the outside linebackers coming in. Is how's that going to look in hindsight? Like you're going to have some great DEs now that were OLBs. I'm a big offense over defense guy. And so I struggled with all the defensive picks that Jets made in this draft. Because I feel like you could have gotten those guys at different spots a little bit later in FA via trade. I'm not sure, and just focused on cleaning up on offense.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Jets. I started this trying to give you a lot of props, and I feel like you just caught a shit ton of strays. But
I mean, it's a good conversation because that's the point of looking at teams who really jumped in the draft, and he was probably the one that jumped the most. between what he potentially could turn this into and what that draft capital looks like through some of these trades and some of the depth he made behind it.
Yeah,
So
I don't think anybody had more picks in the first 62 picks of the draft. I think he led the way when it comes to that. But what's telling is I'm pretty sure he only had 2 offensive picks: Jalen Hyatt at 1.26 and Mingo at 120, and the rest were all defense.
Well, he took Stroud at 105.
Oh, via trade. Yeah, via trade. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
well said.
So he swapped offense for offense there, but the rest was, I think, 4 defense and 2 offense.
Well, I mean, he already had a decent core of wide receivers.
Absolutely, that was his strong point for sure.
Right,
and honestly, it still is.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, short term, I think some of those running backs are going to be good. But I do think when we are in a 32 team dynasty, if I'm going to give somebody $3 million a year, or if I'm going to give somebody what is Anderson making? $3 million. I want somebody, and it's somebody that I expect to play longer than just their rookie contract. Those guys are probably going to be in the league, starting, having a role after their rookie contract ends.
For sure.
We were at
definitely Anderson.
Yeah, we were at the second, potentially third tier of offensive players by the time those picks were in. Don't get me wrong, you could find gems in there that could carve out a role long term in the NFL, but the majority of them probably aren't.
Gotcha. So a couple other teams that I'll call out, not necessarily to talk about my team, but I believe the Panthers and I were both in that fringe contender tier before the draft started. And because we went pick mad in terms of moving potential assets for picks or not moving those picks for actual players, I think we've fallen from fringe contender to potential playoff team, which is fair. But again, I think that's one of the impacts of, while we've sort of tried to stay in the middle there in terms of bringing in some new talent, probably a fair movement of both of our teams down a tier due to the fact that we have really introduced a bit of youth and a bit of risk.
Yeah, the Panthers being there surprised me because I feel like he got stronger. He just added Kenneth Walker for 25 picks.
He got stronger by accumulating players that have had catastrophic injuries.
I don't remember if he had Keenan before when we did the pre-draft or not.
I think he did. That was a pre-draft trade.
Okay. But yeah, and Mike, your team, just because who knows?
Studs, the best at their position, and then a whole bunch of question marks.
I withhold judgment on Mike's team because it's not going to look like this in August. So.
Wait, the best of their position, he's got 2 pretty best of his positions.
Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett.
Yeah,
Christian McCaffrey's debatable.
I'm assuming McCaffrey's going to be gone in 4 to 5 weeks.
I've been waiting for my McCaffrey offer, Mike. But I think this team, it's almost pointless ranking a Vikings team. it's going to look so different in a month.
You have to wait till the first week of the season to actually kind of make a better statement.
The funny thing is when he doesn't move all those top tier players and then he moves everything else for just this, the players just under them, and he's just doubled down to every position, the best too.
Yeah. Well, I put Mike on the fence because I was he could become a playoff team and he could tear it all down, and I don't know which way he's going to go.
Exactly. Well, I don't have my pick, that's why I put you there, Mike, because I just didn't know where you were going. So,
I don't have my pick, and
I want to give you freedom.
Abundantly clear that I can't get it back. So, if I can't get my pick back, there's no point in me to tank. I'm going to be in the wild card conversation. So, again, best case scenario, I make the playoffs. Maybe I win the division. I probably don't catch Jeremy, but shit happens. Worst case scenario, I miss the playoffs and I'm the 16th or 18th pick.
Yeah, but Jeremy is shallow. His team is shallow.
Mm-hmm.
Across
his
the
team
board
is shallow. Jeremy is not shallow. We're not insulting each other here.
No, I won't insult
He's
Jeremy. Jeremy's like super into design and how things look, and if it doesn't look right, he like judges you a little bit. So no, but his team is just lacks a little depth at different parts, except for QB where he has lots of depth.
What parts are these? Defensive end?
I don't think. A linebacker is weird. Safety is, I think, a little bit wonky.
I mean, even wide receiver, like after Cup, Lazard and Boyd are number 3s maybe in their new offenses.
You obviously like his running backs. He's got nice depth there, but for me, everything else is kind of just a toss up. I mean, Jonathan Ford and Josh Metellus are his, at safety 2 and 3. I don't know what that is. He's got, I feel like he's got and he just doesn't have a lot of cap space to make up for any real injuries or issues.
I'm also not certain that Julian Love is going to be a starting safety for Seattle. He might be
That's a big question right there. That's fair.
So again, we'll talk a little bit more about the contender level, which is where Jeremy sorted out. But again, those were some of the ones there. And I think we talked about kind of Rams, Jags, Cards, and other conversations.
For me with Panthers, it was just that I think Bucks and Falcons are a step ahead. I was very impressed with new Falcons owner making some good moves. There were some moves that were argued, but trading Jacobs away and getting what he got, he's in a very solid spot, I think.
I loved that deal for him. We talked about it being potentially good for Jags. It was a home freaking run. You needed to move salary. You needed to move, the contract, and you needed to grab a receiver back.
Yeah, Christian Watson is amazing there. I thought Mayer falling to him in the first was a great. He had tons of tight end problems with Darren Waller getting hurt last year. He got Tyree Wilson to help him out in D. I wouldn't have taken him that early, but he's got the help. Still got solid linebackers across the board. I mean, he really could give. He could easily win the division, in my opinion. We let him get Tune, so he's got his backup at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked if Tune starts 2 games for him this year.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
He's a 4th rounder.
Yeah, I think I'd have him in the contender tier if Kyler was healthy for the whole year, for sure.
Yep. So I think kind of the middle class here on a couple of teams. So I'd say the NFC East middle class and the potential playoff with the Cowboys and Commanders there. Commanders is really that question of does he add or does he subtract? Or does he tear down? I think he's been quote trying to tear down, but
for 3 years now,
I haven't seen a lot of offers, and it's really tough to tear down if you're not actively trying to make moves. But Cowboys has been kind of continuing their very slow but steady march towards contending for some time, but they're not ready to catch Giants yet. So probably wild card team makes a lot of sense, but really, probably is next year before they make the jump to fringe contender. The other ones, like you said, were kind of the NFC South with Bucks and Falcons and fringe contender. And then is it basically the entirety of the AFC North outside of poor Steelers getting caught in the crossfire here as an on-the-fence team?
Yeah.
And again, I could see maybe, Bucks is a Super Bowl champion and hasn't really moved a core piece from that. So moving them from contender to fringe contender here is basically expecting a regression in where they finished last year, which is potential and reasonable, but probably a step already. And then
you got to remember though, Mike, Bucks moved his quarterback.
He got Justin Fields.
He moved to Justin Fields, which could be a huge trade for him. James Robinson turned to straight poop. I mean, like it's like he's nothing now. So there obviously have been a couple changes for him. Is this team stronger or weaker? I have a hard time telling one way or the other, but there is definitely some difference there.
Yeah, and then just to the Super Bowl nod, that is true, but his team was healthy. Every other contender lost multiple key pieces throughout the playoffs, and his team was the only one that was unfazed.
It is a good team.
Yeah, it's really because Falcons is right there with him, I guess. You're probably not going to have enough wins to get the bye. And if you're not going to get the bye, you're going to slog your way through some, the tough NFC. I'd say, we don't necessarily have the top-heavy divisions like AFC does, but I'd say it's going to be a bit of a slog through our playoffs. So.
One thing I would like answered at some point by Bucks, and I've never totally figured it out, is why he gives all his free agents such long contracts.
Oh.
They're all 4 years, 3 years. We sometimes are talking about trades, and then I realize, oh, dude, you signed him to a 7-year deal. I can't absorb that contract. But they're all like that. If you look at his team, they're all like that. So I mean, he needs to get up in the pod someday and kind of just explain why he's doing that.
So my theory is because he just trades all of his picks. It's his way of having a roster for long term. Is anyone he signs, he gives multiple years to, because he doesn't plan on making a lot of draft picks to kind of fill out that long term depth.
Because I've had multiple times he wanted to trade someone to me. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Wait, you signed him to a 4-year deal? No, I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, did you see the trash that I had to take on in order to get the 201 for Damian Harris? I had to take six contract years across 3 players I wanted nothing to do with.
Or he just knows he's not going to keep him, and it's going to be a burden for somebody else eventually.
I think part of it is he doesn't want people to steal him off of Taxi, but at the same time, how can you even promote them?
That's a high risk way of defending your Taxi.
All right. Anything else we want to add about the contenders? I think we've kind of indirectly talked about them, but
I think the Ravens. I was a little surprised that they were, I guess, a lock in here at the second tier, the fringe contender.
I mean, everybody else has running back problems, and he seems safer than everybody else, and he has established players at every other position.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Not a lot of them are oh, these players are amazing, but when you really dig into it, they're probably they're kind of a safer team, definitely lower ceiling, but higher floor by a long shot.
Yeah, I'd really like to see him add a blue chip defensive end, or at least some more depth at defensive end. But yeah, all right.
No, I definitely agree with that. But I picked him as a contender team ahead of Browns and Bengals. I think he's solid all the way through. His wide receivers are great. He's got good quarterback options. Linebackers are solid. He's got some space. He's got picks. I just think that if you said, if he adds another DE that can put up some points, he'll be in good shape.
Yeah. I had him on the fence, and like you guys are much higher on him, kind of across the board.
The hard thing with this year is it being a transition year. Is he's looking at Highsmith and Tryon becoming DEs next year, you know. So it's hard to. I've had a hard time figuring out how much do I want to pay for a DE if I know I'm going to get like 3 of my outside linebackers at DE next year. So it's hard. It's a tough balance to try to figure out.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But that North division is by far the best division. So good. They're all like the Steelers are a great team. They're all great teams. Any of them could win. It's hard to put money on any of them. Like they're all so great. Like if you're not in the AFC North, you're lucky. Period.
Yeah, the Steelers. Steelers was a team that I thought really high of, like a year or two ago. Like I thought they would eventually be a really good team. And it's just like some of their earlier picks in the past few years haven't really panned out as much as you'd like, and some players have left for less appealing free agency spots. But like the other teams in the North have just stayed really good. Like Steelers would still be a really good like playoff contender, probably win their division and the other division, even on like a down year. But just not with the other 3 owners.
But it's like kind of you're in that like purgatory state of like if you're in a division that is this competitive and you're the weakest team in that division, like is it worthwhile to just strip everything down and move your window another 2 years out, rather than try and like claw in and maybe only get lucky based on some injury luck to make the playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think the Steelers right now is a great reason why you would want to tear down or maybe like retool and get like bigger, more noteworthy players, because he had a lot of players that had high upside and that upside just never came, and he's kind of still stuck in the middle.
But the good thing is that roster is young, kind of overall, to a certain extent. Cook, Brian Robinson. I mean, Myers is one of his older guys, but Burks is young. He got that Cortland Sutton trade, which is a great trade for him. His defense is very interesting. And he has his picks. Like, to me, like, if you have your picks, too, you still have a lot of options as to what you want to do. So.
No, I agree. But, like, look at every single player that you just named a year ago. They looked better. And, all of them have kind of, like, their value has kind of dipped a little bit. Like, and he's still the 4th best team in his division. Like, nobody's tearing it down. Nobody's completely aged out to where they're like not a competitive team.
I mean, who would even buy? That's the hard thing, is who could even sell some of these guys to?
Yeah. That was right. Same thing, Goose.
You got to know your market. And as someone who likes to offer a lot of trades, like, I just don't know who he would be trying to sell these guys to.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So, like, he could definitely sell some of the guys. Like Myers definitely has a market. Robinson has a market. Cook, people are still going to go for the upside there. The challenge is exactly, to your point, what's the market, Goose? And then to RJ's point, these guys have lost value from where they were last year. So again, you were selling low on those players. Now, some of them maybe sell low before you can sell for nothing at all. Got it. But is that really the thing to do here? And I mean, if he goes sideways on a couple of these, so say he finds someone to give him a late first for Mac Jones, or an injured quarterback if something happens with Mac Jones. Like, again, who's going to pay a lot for him with a potential challenger of Zappy? And I'm not giving too much credit for that, but there is a possibility of that happening. What's he going to get for that kind of stuff? So I always say go the other way. Like, yeah, you're in a killing field of a division, but your team's not bad. And unfortunately, you're seeing guys like the Bengals recycle well so that their window isn't closing. Again, they picked up Levis, who gives him better long-term stability potentially at the quarterback position.
So now he has 2 QBs that can equal 1 QB.
Yeah.
Fair. But again, the rest of his team, he was able to recycle and add Bijan to it.
Absolutely.
Getting younger.
Well, he lost Olave. Let's not.
Yeah. The only thing that I was saying is, like, based off of what Giants is saying. Basically, like, yeah, imagine if he would have broken this down a year ago, all of the things he could have gotten and retooled and become like a bigger player, because he wasn't.
Jets.
Right.
I really did like his pick of Kincaid. I thought that was a great pick.
Yeah.
The Drew Sanders pick, I think, in the second round was excellent as well. So those 2 picks were really good. Like, I think there's issues at DE.
Yep.
But I mean, overall, he's in a really good spot. There's a lot of room with him having all the picks he has to decide what he wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's at a fork in the road. That's like, you can continue to kind of be conservative and kind of be the worst team in the division, or you can either go all in and use all these future picks and try and make yourself, flip the script and kind of try and be a competitor at the very top of your division, or you sell it all down. And if I would be selling, like, I would be knocking on the door of the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Jags, the Texans, the teams that we were just talking about that are in a very winnable division, who have extra draft assets to spend, who could add a couple of these pieces and suddenly be a playoff team. That would be where I would be shopping if that sale route was where he wanted to go.
And the nice thing for Steelers is all his selling options are very, very young. Yep. He doesn't have an old guy there. There's not an old guy. I mean, maybe Cameron Hayward, who's like a 1-year guy, but everybody else they're young. You know, like, you're not buying a guy that you're gonna, just sell. Like, no one's dying next year that you're buying from him.
Sutton might.
I mean, that would be very sad for Sutton, but yeah, maybe.
All right. Any final thoughts on the
Sutton's all of 27 years old.
Yeah, but he's got some bad knees.
He's an old 27. All right. Good discussion. Thanks, guys, for pulling together those who were able to do the ratings. Again, I'll do mine, and we'll see kind of how they continue to evolve during the off season here. But definitely some fun conversation. Let's go through the trades that have happened in the last, call it 4 weeks, month, whatever you want to say at this point. So I think there are 14 transactions that count as trades. A couple of them are trades and trade back, or shit like that. But again, if I have to go beyond the 30 days here, because I think it's been that long. So the trade we didn't talk about last podcast, because again, we just didn't have the content, couldn't get to that point, and I wanted to just end the suffering rather than trying to continue to turn around something that wasn't happening. Was a trade that Colton Giants made. Colts giving up Rashad Penny, Brandon Cooks, Derek Stingley Jr., and $519 for Breida, Dontrell Hilliard, Khalil Shakir, Isaiah Likely, and Jimmy Ward. I'm usually I'll call it neutral party on the podcast, but I truly don't understand the upside of this outside of, again, potentially Breida if Saquon does hold out for the Colts. But again, I just don't get it.
I mean, he gets younger. Khalil Shakir, Isaiah Likely, they're young.
Yeah, I liked both of those players a lot for like young depth pieces.
How old is Khalil Shakir?
He was just that was his second year, so I don't know.
That was his rookie year last year.
This would be a second year, yes. Yeah, what I meant. I don't know how excited you get about a backup tight end. Overall, likely is great, but I mean, Mandrews is still the guy.
Yep.
I thought that trade was just horrible for Colts personally. I totally understand why Giants took it, like slam dunk. Like I would take it in a heartbeat. But again, it goes back to what's Colts trying to do. Is he making his assets turn into more or less? And that one didn't look great to me.
So again, I can understand the breakdown, but I don't think that's what the breakdown should look like. And frankly, I think a lot of the positions he needed to get better at, he got worse. So again, been wrong a lot, might be wrong again. I'll lump the next two together here. This caused a lot of controversy in the chat. Texans giving up the 523 to the Rams for nothing, and RJ and I swapping the 526 for the 529. Again, I think the Texans were trying to get out of the cap hit, so that's why they moved off that pick. And then RJ and I was trying to move up 3 spots, but what the hell is a 3-spot jump in the 5th round look like from player consideration perspective? It's kind of tough to value that in terms of future picks and or players. So RJ was just willing to do the swap straight up to give himself a couple more picks to figure out who he wanted to take. Again, it was a back and forth here, whether that stuff's fair, and we'll leave that to the commissioners to continue to talk about. But again, it's one-sided deals. We don't need to spend too much time about it. Then you got the trade and trade back of Gary Brightwell between the Bears and the Giants. And then, Goose, I was surprised to see this one. Josh Paschal for Ogbonnia Okunrock. I feel like you've been trying to move, either buy or sell Paschal like multiple times over the last year. What made you finally decide it was time to move him?
I had a lot of Lions players at the start of this season, and I felt a little overcommitted. And I liked Agba going over to Cleveland and being the second or third DE and being able to trade extend them. So Ravens and I had been going back and forth for a while on different players. So I just sent him that, and he took it. So that was the deal.
Makes sense.
I mean, playing opposite Myles Garrett is a pretty decent position to be in.
Granted, Zadarius Smith is there now.
That's true.
Post my trade, I'm a big believer in the 3 DE rotation, though, so it doesn't really bother me that much overall, given that they gave Agba a 3-year deal versus Smith being on a 1-year deal. But, I mean, it is what it is. So I think it worked out for both of us. He got a lower cap hit. I got maybe some more guaranteed points.
All right, moving on up. Giants finally gave up Brightwell. Hooray. Then we've got the Broncos Buccaneers.
You skipped Panthers Cardinals.
Oh, fine. I guess we can talk about that. Cardinals giving up Walker and Caden Ellis for 2 linebackers, and Panthers first, second, and third and 25. I understand what you guys are saying. Hey, Madison's now an RB1, so it's okay. But it's offense for defense. It's God knows where that first, second, and third are going to be, especially with the way that Panthers likes to trade and another year out for Falcons, Bucks, and Saints to kind of continue their moving around. It seems like a solo on Walker, but to each their own.
Well, I think that a big thing is that Holcomb got trade extended, and he signed a multi-year deal with the Steelers. So good for Cardinals. MLBs are hard to find, but Panthers didn't trade extend Caden Ellis, so he just has Ellis for 1 year. And Walker's great. There's a 1-2-3. I view it as a 1-2-3 for Walker and Holcomb for Ellis swap. But Charbonnet has the same exact draft capital as Walker, pretty much. So I don't know what you do with that.
Yeah, but he's in Seattle, a team that loves to run, and he's very explosive. I mean, the thing that I was just mad about is that Walker wasn't put on the trade bait as give me your best offers for this young stud running back or former stud running back, whatever, based off of the draft. It just like happened, and like some of us were like, we're looking to sell picks for players, and like me specifically, and there was no discussion, it was just like a trade that happened, two ships in the night, and the rest of us who probably would have made this a pretty good bidding war for the Cardinals just didn't get the opportunity.
I would have jumped in and bid.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more would have you paid than a 1, 2, 3 though? Really?
2 firsts.
You would have gone 2 firsts?
For Walker,
Probably.
I mean, especially if they're mid to late, like I would imagine RJ would probably give 2 of these playoff firsts if he's gotten 24 for Kenneth Walker.
Here's the thing, like over under, does Walker get more than 20 catches next year? 20 receptions?
Probably.
I think that's a pretty good line.
Yards per catch would be pretty important in that too.
Yeah. He's very explosive.
Right.
And they just added a slot receiver they've been missing. Like they're not going to be able to stuff the box. Like their 2 young tackles are going to be another year in, get better on the line. I know that, I mean, Seattle's always had a running back by committee for the last half a decade. So like nothing new, to be honest. There wasn't much different last year versus with Penny and others in the backfield either.
Yeah, he's explosive. He's very much one of those players that could be like when Kamara broke out, where it's like, how is he putting up so much off of like so few carries or so few touches? Like
So I would put it this way. I understand what you're saying, Goose, in terms of pass game upside. So what's that kind of mean for him? Range of outcomes for Walker, I'd say the floor definitely got lowered with the Njigba pick and the Charbonnet pick, because now there's multiple ways that offense can attack you. And again, maybe that helps, maybe that hurts. But the upside, I mean, he was the 104 last year. So are we saying because a running back got taken by Seattle in the second round a year later, he's gone from being the 104 to realistically, if I offered my 25 first, second, and third to somebody right now, I'm probably not breaking the top 20 in terms of prospects this year.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, Mike, but I don't want to price anchor either because, I mean, Walker was early second round, and now we got Charbs like mid-second round. Their draft capital is
It's similar.
It's
I get
super
it.
simimer. Like, so.
I mean, we just watched the Bills do this, right? They took Singletary and then Zach Moss.
Yeah. No, but I mean, Singletary and Moss are both third rounders. Like second round RBs are actually kind of rare. Like they're not super common. That's a lot of draft capital in this day and age. And Pete Carroll being who he is, I mean, I love Walker and I like Charbs. I think teams could start both of them. But I don't think that the 1, 2, and 3 is like a bad. I know people thought that it was a bad deal, but I don't think that's a bad deal. That's a lot of volume. That's a lot of picks, especially if Panthers can't beat out Falcons and Bucks.
All right. Good discussion.
Yeah, like I said, my biggest problem was with the process. If you're gonna sell a top tier player,
it wasn't put out there, hey, I'm selling him. He could have maybe got more from a standard Broncos fire sale.
Or, the Vikings fire sale, which actually did get a number of responses, but neither here nor there. Speaking of Broncos Bucks deal, Skoranek, Michael Thomas, Carl Granderson, Cam Sutton, and Brian Cook, Malik Davis, Rashid Shaheed, Dontavian Wicks, Draymond Jones, and Javon Holland. I mean, to me, this just kind of reads as Bill trading offense for defense. There may be some cap savings in there. I haven't looked at all the numbers, but that's kind of what that's reading to me. And again, Bill's always had kind of a hard-on for Draymond Jones, so it seems like him trying to get him back. But I think this looks much better for Bucks for me.
I kind of disagree. I think it looks better for Broncos because I don't believe Michael Thomas. Like he's currently dealing with another issue with his foot. Like I know he's a big name, but like he's 30. He hasn't played in like 3 years. Like I don't know that he's really an offensive piece here. So then it's just like Skoranek for Rashid Shaheed, who, if Thomas is not playing, is likely on the field more, and a flyer on Wicks. But the Jones and Holland upgrade on defense.
I love every player that Bill got in this. Like Malik Davis is going to put up numbers this year, like some amount of numbers. He will be a productive back. Shaheed has an opportunity. Wicks will probably get some type of an opportunity in a new offense that they're trying to figure out, or at least a new quarterback. Draymond consistently puts up some type of production, and I love Javon Holland.
Yeah,
Holland's an upgrade to Cooks. Draymond probably an upgrade in comparison to Granderson.
Definitely considering contracts.
Yeah, and
the problem with Draymond though is he's going to be a DT next year.
Yes, that's true.
Sure.
So you got to think. I mean, you just got to value. You're buying long term that Draymond contract is a DT contract, not a defensive end contract.
Yeah. But Granderson was a 1-year deal, anyways, so he would have had to tag him if he was keeping him.
I think Bill got the last bit of value of what Michael Thomas's name brings, and that was a good trade on his part.
Yeah.
To me, that was fair. I thought that was an even trade. They both got stuff they wanted. It's not pushing either of them over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, if Thomas plays like more than 8 games, like this probably goes into Bucks' favor. But
I do want to say I don't think Malik Davis puts up anything near what they're projecting him for. Thanks, Fantasy Sharks.
Yeah, the Malik Davis projections. I think that, I mean, there's a decent chance that Zeke signs with them again. You know, and they've got a rookie too. You know, so.
That rookie's just a feel-good story, isn't he?
I mean, maybe, but he's also small and fast, and Malik Davis is just undrafted trash, right?
Fair.
All right. Moving along. Bucks keeps trading, bringing down Baron Browning for Dominique Robinson and Darnell Savage. I'm going to admit to not knowing a ton about situations here. But again, linebacker for DN and safety, very helpful this year, less helpful next year.
Yeah, Browning will be a DE next year. This is a gamble because if the defensive coaching staff was the same for Denver and they were going to keep Browning on like a pass rusher plan, I totally get it because he's a $1 million contract. He's like 24, freak athlete. But he was a middle. Sean Payton and co are going to want to utilize him. So like he may very well end up just back as like rotational, off ball linebacker, which you just gave up a defensive end and a safety for.
And this was right before the injury news for Browning, or right around the injury news for Browning came out as well.
Yeah, he's gonna miss 6 months or something, right?
Yeah, he had knee cleanup. Like he's probably not gonna be ready for the start of the season. So, yeah, there's just questions as to what you're getting. I mean, everybody was excited about that Nick Bonito guy last year. He didn't do anything. So the Denver defense is a big question mark in my mind.
Yep.
That knee thing sounds like it's a continuous issue. Like if you had any type of like knee surgery from like 2020 to 2021, like you've had constant problems with it. He's at least the third guy that's had problems with knee surgeries during that time period.
All right. Then we've got Chiefs breaking down Tank Dell for Calvin Austin and Colts 25 second. I don't know. I like this for you, Goose. What did you pay for Tank? Was that a mid-second or was that a third?
No, that was an early second.
Okay.
So it was like before 2000, before 210. So it wasn't cheap.
Yeah,
fair.
Calvin Austin though has been getting some hype. I really liked him last year. He's a player I've tried to get. It's just like a best ball receiver. I mean, he's a Pittsburgh receiver. They tend to be productive at some point, and then you likely got your draft capital back in a 25 second here.
It's getting just delayed 2 years. So not that it's a bad thing. Goose has plenty of depth, and knowing him, he will somehow parlay that into a $1 million linebacker that's scoring 200 points and 150-point tight end that's making $3.5 million or something like that. That just seems to be the Goose way.
And I bet you Calvin Austin has more points than Nate Dell this year.
That's an interesting side bet. That would be an interesting side bet, I think.
Yeah.
Because I honestly, I don't know either way. I think returns might be a big part of that equation.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that they are like comparable by the
Yeah.
end of the year. And that second is just pure profit.
And that says more to like the Houston receiving room situation than anything. But yeah. Something that we should track.
I think that's a fun little side bet. I mean, I think we've got like a bets post on the message board, and I think this is a good one, which is kind of gentleman's bet or something like that. It doesn't have to be for anything, but I think it's a fun side bet, like you said, to keep track of. Back to Broncos this times with Goose trading their 25-second Steph Gilmore for Russell Gage, Matt Henningsen, Kendall Fuller, and a 24 fifth.
Chiefs has a remarkable way of always getting like one extra piece every deal.
I would rather have Gilmore than Fuller.
Absolutely, but that was Bill's request. He really wanted Fuller. Getting Gilmore was nice for me because Fuller's got a week 14 bye. It's like, I don't want week 14 buys. So sure, go ahead.
I'm struggling again. I love Fantasy Sharks for these projections. So what Fantasy Sharks is saying is Russell Gage in a Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask-led offense with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans still there is going to catch 61 passes for 592 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So if Gage gets 6 touchdowns, I have to go look this up. But how many touchdowns are Godwin and Evans getting? I got to imagine double digits. So they're projecting. What the hell are they projecting for Baker Mayfield then?
Baker's back, baby.
Yeah. Top 10 quarterback.
I think the Athletic just had an article. Don't sleep on the Baker Mayfield.
I mean, the what I'll say this is the guy who sold Gage, but points per dollar, he's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to find better points per dollar than Russell Gage, but yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know what these projections mean one way or the other.
So again, I get it. It's Fantasy Sharks. It's not real projections. Fine. Baker Mayfield's projected stat line: 400 completions, 633 yards, 4,000 yards total for 23 touchdowns, and 6 of them are going to Russell Gage. So now, of course, I have to check the Godwin and Evans stat lines to see if these add up or if we've found a hole in the matrix here, and clearly the Fantasy Sharks projections are full shenanigans.
No.
I know. 10 touchdowns for Evans. So if Godwin has more than 7, then they are projecting some serious work for our friend Kyle Trask here.
And what does that mean for Kate Otten and running backs not getting any receiving touchdowns?
Oh, God. Godwin's only getting 4 touchdowns. So there is an opportunity there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Gage more the touchdowns than Godwin. There's another bet we can track.
Well, Kyle for asking this.
I don't want to take the Godwin Gage bet. I'm not taking that.
No shit.
I don't. I don't want to bet on this either, but I'm not sure Godwin stays the wide receiver 3 there all year.
Receiver 2, you think he gets moved?
Gage, I'm sorry. I don't think
Gage,
Gage stays the wide receiver 3 all year.
That is a possibility.
All I can say is I was offered my future 2 for Gage, and I was like, no, this is a good value. So,
I will fully admit to sending it to everybody.
Yeah, I mean that's what Goose does. Is
as
he
one
has
does
an idea, he sends it to everybody, and a couple people bite. So that's just kind of how deals get done.
I mean, I really don't I don't hate that value. If you just said like Russell Gage, he's $500,000. He's a productive wide receiver in the NFL, like consistent production. Okay, second round pick, that's fine.
If you think your second round pick is middle or later, I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because look at what people got for their 2.15 and later.
You're not going to find very many 6 years in at this that's going to maintain that type of value.
It's not better than Russell Gage, I don't think. There's a lot of garbage in that second half of the second round.
That's fair. All right, so we've got a couple more Bill trades here. Jeremy Ruckert for Kenny Nangwu and a 4th. Interesting. So was this before or after the Cook release?
After.
No, it was before. It was before.
It was before.
It was before, and I thought it was a steal before, and it's a steal after. Sorry, Giants.
No, I was fine flipping return man exclusively, essentially, for a young tight end who's going to be playing with Aaron Rodgers, who likes tight ends.
Well, I drafted Ruckert, so I like him. And he's also from Ohio State, so obviously I have to like him. Again, Fantasy Sharks was not kind to him. 3 targets for 2 receptions and 33 yards. Again, that's a great yards per attempt and yards per completion for a tight end. But he's got to beat those numbers. But again, he couldn't get on the field last year, but I really like the makeup of him as a tight end. So he's a good.
And he had an injury last year, which is part of it. And I would be shocked if Minnesota doesn't add a running back from the plethora that are available still in free agency. I don't really expect Kenny to be part of the running back rotation very frequently.
Or at least not a major part of it.
Yeah.
All right. Then a couple of pre-pod / in-pod trades by RJ, giving up Brevin Jordan for Bryson Hopkins and a 5th, and giving up Adrian Amos for Andrew Van Ginkel and a 4th. Van Ginkel's been making the rounds here. Did he come from me, or where did he come from?
I don't know, but he lost his job, I think. But decent production.
Oh, he came from
Good
Giants.
contract.
Yeah, he's been making the rounds, right? I dumped him on Bill. Bill dumped him on the Bucks. Bucks dumped him on Giants. Giants dumped him on Bears. Bears now dump him on.
I dumped him to you before that, so he's been moving around.
Yeah.
Though I mean, there's worse guys to own at the linebacker position.
At the beginning of the offseason, he was a good player to have. He was playing opposite of Jerome Baker, but they've since signed David Long. So now he's probably just going to sit on the bench with Duke Riley, and they're going to argue about who has better hair.
I mean, he's really an outside linebacker, though.
Yes.
So he might get decent snaps.
Yeah.
The fourth is really the pick that the actual value in that trade.
Yep, I got rid of a guy that was a filler in a trade, I think, at some point. It was on a 1-year deal. Good. I got some type of value for him, and
Yeah.
now I have a linebacker that I could potentially flip for something else.
Yeah, and getting rid of Brevin Jordan, who's clearly on the outs. Good deal, in my opinion, as well.
I didn't want to go through my second teardown in 3 years with the same tight end going. Eventually he'll be good.
Yeah, and I think I offered you a second or a third at some point for Jordan when we thought he was good.
For sure, it was
but lots of people thought he was decent, and then it just, disappeared.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is what can happen with some of the tight ends. And sure, he's young, but the writing's on the wall. He's been in the league long enough that you can see the ascension of a quality tight end where he's he looks kind of good, and then the next thing you know, it's he looks lost in this offense.
Yeah. I mean, that signing of what's his name, who I traded Mike for, now I can't remember who I traded for, but
OJ Howard?
No. Mike, who did I get from you? We swapped tight ends.
You gave me Musgrave and I gave you Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, Schultz got that 1 year deal. Schultz is the guy there now. That's it. There's no question.
Why did I say OJ Howard?
Everyone
did he go there at some point?
OJ Howard is he did go to Houston, and now he's with the Raiders.
Okay, cool. All right.
He had that one game with 2 or 3 touchdowns, and then didn't catch another pass.
Yeah, right. OJ Howard, the biggest tight end tease in the last 7 years.
I guess, and not follow through on. I don't know. I thought the same thing. It's I understand Schultz is probably the one thing that you can count on there, but like I said when I got Noah Brown the first time, I want a piece of the offense. I'll take the cheapest I can get for it. So.
Right. Now, I mean, when you look at it, compared to Bryson Hopkins, who is 26, has done literal nothing in Los Angeles, you could imagine there's at least some percentage that Jordan can carve out a role, at some point in Houston where
go somewhere else.
Right.
He's still young enough.
Have I cut Hopkins yet? I need to.
And I want Bill to hear this, but I love his moves. They're great. The AFC West appreciates the moves he makes.
Holy shit! That's the nicest thing Goose has ever said to Bill, I think, and we got it live on podcast. So I had to make a couple of deletions of old podcasts to make room for this one. So I'll do what I can, but at this one, I think we got to keep around for as long as possible to make sure it's well understood the deep admiration the Chiefs have for the Broncos here and the mutual respect the division has for each other.
Yeah, mutual respect. That's exactly how I interpreted that.
Yeah.
All right. So hour and 18 minutes. Not bad. Again, back from hiatus. Great content. Again, thanks again to everybody who put rankings in. Thanks again to everybody who listened. As mentioned, we'll try and get the quality of podcast up from last week. I think we have a good start in kind of reestablishing where we want things to be. So as usual, now's the fun part. And with Goose on here, God knows how many trades are going to go down afterwards. So thanks again to the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Giants for joining. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and great rest of the week.